This garden's 8 years old and it's set up in a functional pattern. It's on contour. They also harvest water to this contour growing bed, which is set up to be exactly the right width that I can reach to the middle, and from the other footpath on the opposite side I can reach to the middle. It means that I don't walk or compact the soil, because it's very important that I can get across the garden and actually not damage the soil by compressing it, which squeezes the air out, what makes it potentially more acid because of that, and actually damages that millions and billions and gazillions of little organisms that are in that soil, that we've spent 8 years building. This relationship, this soil ecosystem has been built in this soil. I'm adding a little bit of compost around some of these plants. Just a little bit of added fertilizer for the soil organisms. And we can add a little handful of compost here and there around the base of these plants, and they'll pick right up. They'll grow really well. You only need a little bit every now and again. I'll encourage the organisms to come in and interact with these plants so they can go to work feeding these plants and interacting with the minerals in the soil and the elements in the soil that they can give to these plants in exchange for the starch that these little plants are making right now from the sunlight shining on the leaves, and through photosynthesis they have a surplus of starch which they can exude to the soil and exchange for minerals through a partnership of interaction with soil life. We've chosen a kind of matrix of complication, so visually it doesn't look like one species. We've got perennials down the edge. It's a society garlic, so it's given off a smell that actually makes it confusing to pests. We've got red leaves, green leaves, a little bit of purple leaf, feathery leaves, frilly leaves, combinations of shapes, combinations of colours, combination of form, a little bit of chaos in cooperative confusion, so that any pest that comes into this garden is confused by the smell, the colour, the forms and the patterning. And yet the whole garden is patterned to be double reach to the middle, on contour. And the other thing we've done is we've favoured the predators. So we have little ponds that favour frogs, we have garden perches and bird perches and bird baths that favour the predatory birds that come in. And we've got little rockeries that favour the lizards. All of these are predators of garden pests. So we're favouring the predators and confusing the pests. There's one of our birds. They're wild birds. They're interacting with our cooperative action. They like what we're doing. And any pest that comes in here is quickly confused. And a confused pest where you have favoured predator habitat is just eaten very quickly, and then later on through the digestion of the birds or digestion of the lizards or digestion of the frogs comes down as predator poop, fertiliser to the garden. Another inoculum of interesting soil life additive. So how do you do that? Well, that's a raised bed, and as you can see from the moisture that's around, we're in quite a damp climate. So we need to raise the garden bed. So we've dug the footpath, we've pegged it to wheelbarrow width so it's practical. We've got our main delivery vehicle, the wheelbarrow, to bring material in and take material out in the form of food. We've dug the footpath, we've made the raised bed with what's come out of the footpath, and then we've added our compost. So we've added compost to the soil, right? this is full of the soil organisms, and now we're going to plant our crops and add our mulch. The mulch, the straw and the grasses that protect the soil and keep it at a nice moisture and temperature, not too hot, not too cold, they'll feed the soil organisms, and so will the growing roots of the plants. So we're going into a raised bed system because here we're in a humid climate with quite a bit of rain. In a climate that's more arid, where we have very dry, hot conditions, we'll go the other way and we'll garden with a sunken bed, a bed that's actually the opposite. So we're retaining moisture, we're retaining a cool growing condition because it's too hot most of the time, and we'll actually put a shade over the top to reduce the amount of sunlight because we want to diminish the drying and evaporating effect. To start a garden, you need to put in about a cubic meter of compost to 1,000 cubic meters of growing bed. So you can go 2 cubic meters to 1,000 meters of growing bed if you like, or more. So you go right up to 20 cubic meters to 1 hectare. That starts the process off, and you don't need to add as much after that because you're returning plant nutrients, you're returning plant food. So from here on, we can start now planting our vegetable seedlings. So we'll take our trays of vegetable seedlings and we'll start to plant out our rows. Once we've got those planted, we can then start to mulch our garden and insulate it from all the conditions of sun, evaporation, and leaching of rain, because the mulch will be like an insulation blanket, holding moisture like the forest litter. It'll hold 1/3 of its thickness will be held up in moisture. So we'll have, if we have 3 inches of mulch, it'll hold 1 inch of water. And the difference between a mulch bed and a bare soil bed is it takes 1/10 the amount of moisture to keep the plants growing. So a bare soil bed takes 10 times the amount of water that a mulch bed requires. So we can really reduce the amount of water needed, and the moisture is also held up in the life in the soil. The life in the soil is, like all life, based in carbon and water.